Hey, what's good people, man? Platinum Bearded Dread. Lovely day again, man. Question, man. Would you consider yourself to be one of the cool ones? Or the geek? It's funny, innit? Because no one wants to be the geek, man. Everyone wants to be the cool one. Myself included. I remember in school, yeah, we'd look at all the weirdos that you only saw them in like 2s and 3s. And their clothes were all slightly a bit different in a sense that they didn't really have the latest gear, if you like, clothing. And you know what I mean? They weren't really part of the inner circle. Not that I necessarily was, but I always tried to be. I was somewhere in the middle, floating in the middle. And no one wanted to associate with the geeks. And it's funny because if you check it, yeah, it's the same thing in the adult world. Everybody wants to be known, or it doesn't matter what circle it is, whether it's on the famous platform, celebrity platform, or even amongst friends, adults, children. Everyone wants to be the main one, the life and soul. And I can see why, in a sense, because it can seem like that person is, Mr. or Mrs. Popular, and they're really happy and stuff like that. And if you look at social media, it's blown up to the extent that you can paint any picture you like. All you got to do is stand outside a car that might not even be yours, or put on the best wear and say I'm living my best life and all that. So it's easy, man. And I guess you get followers like that because people will want what you want. But it's funny because I was talking to my son, and he's a lot wiser than I was at his age, school age. And he don't fit in with all of that, He's not really the typical, that kind of like competitive mindset, football and girls and, you know what I mean? And the more I reflected on it, the more I realised that he didn't do what I did. Me, I was there trying to fit in, and it took years and years and years to make me realise that I couldn't be what I'm not. And no matter how many times I tried and years I tried, I was never really satisfied. I always felt odd. But I didn't really see the signs. I kept trying, but he discovered at an early age. And yes, it's a bit painful because it's a lonely path at the beginning. I said to him that, because the average human being, whether you're talking child or adult, are not gonna wanna deal with themselves. They'd rather be part of a group or part of a persona, and be seen as something else other than themselves. Because I guess these days, as they say, the hardest thing and the easiest thing is to be yourself. But he's understood it. It's just that he's gone through that period in time where, he has to not just own it, but it makes sense to him and be comfortable with it. And because he's so young, it makes it more difficult. But it will be sweeter when, and it has, he begins to link with like minds. But the reason why I mentioned the whole geek cool thing is because I remember when you look at those ones at school that were the cool ones, 9 times out of 10, those are the ones that ended up not really achieving much when they left school and became adults. It was the geeks, the ones who were brave enough, if you like, to be themselves, even if it meant they get mocked. It was the ones who were happy either being on their own or with 1 or 2 friends. Even if it seemed like they weren't a part of the quote-unquote in crowd, it was the ones who expressed themselves in their own way, in their own, you know what I mean? You get certain people that wear funny makeup, well, not funny makeup, but we might perceive as weird makeup and weird shoes, but it was those ones who went on to do great things, man. Their own business and, free-spirited type of person where they didn't have the same they didn't fall for the same traps that the cool ones did. And now it makes sense because even though it was difficult for them at the beginning, maybe they got bullied. But it's like they held on to who they were, and as rocky as it was at the beginning, they held on to that, despite all the insults and stuff. But they as a result of that, they became very strong at a young age because they saw the value in being yourself. Well, those cool ones were always living a facade, wearing a mask for years and years that went on into adulthood. And then they looked around and realised that they didn't really have no friends. Not really. They just had acquaintances. Like in the celebrity world, you can be well known by loads of people, but you don't really have any friends, you know, core friends that are there for you regardless. And those ones, the cool ones, that's the direction they went in. Fortunately for me, after years and years and years of just not being happy trying to fit in, then I had to accept the fact that now, man, this isn't working. And then the moment I began to settle into myself, that's when things really began to take shape. So as I look at my son and what he's going through and what he's doing, I'm kind of proud because he's understanding it earlier. And for the new generations that are coming up, it's hard for them because there are so many new gadgets, you know what I mean, TikTok, all this kind of stuff that can make a person appear quote unquote famous and well known and liked, and so they get more and more far removed from who they really are. And there is no way a person can find happiness and inner joy and peace by looking outside of themselves. It's like the lyrics of Bob Marley, you're running and you're running and you're running away. You're running and you're running and you're running away. You're running and you're running, but you can't run away from yourself. It's so true, man. So true. And the moment I think we begin to embrace whatever that self is, warts and all, man, something changes, man. Something really changes. And isn't it weird because we start off as babies and we don't know anything other than ourselves, you know? We ain't looking at who's looking at us when we're crying for milk or when we're, even when we're toddlers, you know, when we're in our world, we're playing with our little toys or we're pretending that we're, I don't know, Superman or a princess. You're in that world and that is what you are at that time. You're not bothered about who's looking at you. But then something happens along the way whereby we begin to look outside of ourselves and we want to fit whatever the outside model is and become further and further removed. That's why I always say now that you see my sons now, let them be geeks, man. I'm happy with that because I know what that means. Really and truly, a geek is someone who is not afraid to step out on their own. And despite the slings and the shots that might be taken at them, they're still standing on it in their who they recognise to be themselves. You know, they're not trying to fit into something that is not them. They're not trying to be a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. And now, and I've been like this for a long time, when I see like people walk on the streets, sometimes you know, I might see someone, I don't know, with like high-inch heels or some weirdo clothes. I admire them, man. I really admire them. I'm not one of those people that look at them and say, yeah, look at that, man. Oh, ew. No, I really admire them because they're bold enough to stand up and say, this is me, man. And I don't really care what you think, this is me. And who said it? Osho said it, the philosopher, the spiritual philosopher said it, is that it's the highest form of freedom when you get to the point where you don't care what other people think. So yeah, man, maybe it's time to be geeks, man. Real talk, man. And not let the word scare us. Because ultimately, as we know, if you look at the world of celebrity, probably like 1% are even happy. And we're there looking at them, marveling and wishing we were there, and well, some of us, you know what I mean? And they have the perfect lighting, the perfect makeup, the perfect angles, the perfect photographs. Everything's perfect. They even choose certain models at a certain age, normally at least no more than 24 years old, because they're at that point where certain things, their body hasn't really changed that much. You know, they'll choose young men, they've got their six-pack, and you know what I mean? And we're all looking at that. Not that I don't have a six-pack, you know what I mean? But we're all looking at that and kind of, you know, trying to be like that when they're a different age group. And not even just that, it's just the fact they've got professionals to make them look quote-unquote perfect. And even they're not happy with all of that perfection. So I say it again, man, maybe it's time to be geeks, man, and just be who we are. And if you don't know what that is, start on that journey. Platinum Village Red. Yeah, man.